sometimes Christmases can be depressing. There's a lot of fun until it starts to get a bit much, doesn't it? And so the housekeeper writes, holidays can be depressing. I don't blame you for being down. Your big 40 birthday was less than a week away, and you had dealt with ovarian cancer for years, and your beauty queen looks were fading. Miss West Virginia of 1977 had become a middle-aged matron. You loved JonBenet, but she was a handful, wetting the bed night after night. She was driving you crazy. Now, Patsy does like to put a show on, and sometimes behind that show are things that are really not really very attractive at all. So on the one hand, you have JonBenet, who wins these pageants. On the other hand, you have this child who can't sleep and who wets her bed every night, and the smell of urine in her bedroom almost every morning. That's the other side of the JonBenet story. And is there another side to Patsy? Is there another side to John? Is there another side to Burke? And so it's not every day that we think of JonBenet, this cute little girl, being a handful, rather than this one-dimensional version of her just as an innocent victim and nothing more.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. And was JonBenet a handful to anyone else? Was anyone else in that family a handful as well? The housekeeper goes on to say, Christmas Day wasn't quiet or peaceful either. There was pressure, lots of pressure, and I wasn't there to smooth out the rough edges for you. Sure, it was a picture-perfect snow on the ground, and your home was a decorator's dream. Isn't it interesting that even the housekeeper remembers there was snow on the ground that Christmas? I mean, she visited Boulder the day before, and she lived in the area as well. She goes on to write, I remember helping to decorate the artificial Christmas trees, one for nearly every room in the house. That is a lot of work. And also, taking a bicycle to the neighbor just shows you a lot of work went into this. Giant candy canes bordered both sides of the walk, but there were homes to visit, open houses that had to be dropped in and dropped out of, and you were expected to gather up Burke and JonBenet and have them ready to fly out at daybreak to Michigan, where there was going to be a second Christmas at your lakefront vacation house. John would hire the pilot, but you were the one who had to pack and organize and get the kids dressed. Now imagine the amount of work, not only preparing one perfect Christmas, for Patsy's own children, but another for John's kids as well. The housekeeper goes on to say, so you were weary that night. Who wouldn't be? John was no help. He did what he always did, swallowed a couple of melatonin capsules and fell into a deep sleep. He wouldn't have heard a cannon go off if it was next to the bed. Now, I don't know if I agree with the housekeeper's assessment in terms of this. One has to wonder who read Mindhunter and who decided to dip into it that night, if anyone did. And if anyone did, who was most likely to do so? Because it does seem as though someone had a kind of a microscopic knowledge of the crime, thinking of it as a crime scene. That there might be fingerprints, traces, a psychological profile left by the ransom note writer. All of this had to be delicately done away with or disguised. It is also interesting to note the housekeeper's almost sneering dislike for John, saying John was no help. He did what he always did, etc. Her impression appears to be that if Patsy did very little around the house, John did virtually nothing. Well, I guess as a sort of businessman running a billion-dollar empire, he perhaps earned the right to that, but it certainly does expose the housekeeper's attitude to John. She also writes, you were still wearing the red sweater and black velvet trousers when you put JonBenet to bed Christmas night. Surprisingly, for someone who has 100 dresses and prides herself with never wearing the same outfit twice. Now, this is also, I think, a very interesting insight, potentially from the housekeeper. You do get certain people that are like that. I'm not going to wear an outfit or not be seen wearing the same outfit twice. And then she said, you were wearing that same costume when the police arrived the next day. So obviously the housekeeper sees this as significant. Is she right? Now, I've made the same observation, that there doesn't seem to be an innocent reason why Patsy, of all people, Patsy, who's this flashy, showy, and, all about appearances, would fly out on the day after Christmas wearing the clothes she'd worn the previous day. What are John's kids going to think of her? What is John even going to think of her? Now, through the course of writing books and covering this case, many people have told me they do this all the time, and it's absolutely normal. Maybe it's normal for you. Maybe it's also normal for me. But if you think Patsy would do this after 28 years, you still don't have a clue about the type of woman Patsy really was. In my opinion, and I think in the housekeeper's opinion as well, you don't know the kind of person you're dealing with here. She wouldn't do that. In any event, this is the housekeeper's version of what she thinks happened. It's almost, as far as I'm concerned, as silly as Kolar's stolen pineapple theory. She says, JonBenet wet the bed again that night, didn't she? She woke up and told you about it before you were even undressed, and you simply lost it. You took her into the bathroom. Now, that's another thing that I'm not sure is accurate, that JonBenet would have woken up and told her mother. I kind of got the impression that they simply changed clothing and then went to another bed. Perhaps if it happened early in the night, maybe. Now, this part, if true, is quite disturbing. It was the same destination you always took JonBenet when it was time to punish her for bedwetting. You forget that I saw you take her there so many times before, meaning you forget that, Patsy, I saw you take JonBenet into her bathroom many times before, shutting the door tightly behind you so her screams could not be heard. It's quite worrying if this is true. Except this time there was an accident, wasn't there? You picked up the long black flashlight you had brought with you and you swung it. Now, this also doesn't really make sense. Why would Patsy take a flashlight into JonBenet's bathroom? You swung it first at her crotch and then next at her head. Maybe you meant to scare her, and maybe you didn't mean to kill her, but you did. Now, that to me is also not particularly convincing. I don't think the kind of sexual interference was as crude as the housekeeper has it, but I guess she's got to try and reconcile her theory with the evidence. Now, despite everything, not even the housekeeper believed that Patsy deliberately murdered her child. There are some who do believe this, and I think this reveals, if you do, this reveals your depravity and your lack of understanding of this case, not Patsy's. Anyway, the housekeeper goes on to say, at first you thought you had knocked her out, but then she wasn't breathing, and you felt for a pulse, but there was none. Now, this is also probably not accurate, because JonBenet very likely would have been alive for some time even after suffering that blow to the head. It was a concussive blow, but it wouldn't have killed her instantly. And some even say that it was possibly even survivable. So I do think that element may have been true in the ground zero of this case, that she could have been knocked out by this blow, and someone may have found her, didn't want her to be dead, didn't intend to kill her, but then were dealt with the situation. JonBenet is not conscious now. How do we bring her back, in a way? And so the part that's missing from this story is the pineapple, the scream. And that, I mean, if there was a scream, wouldn't that have woken up John or Burke as well? And I mean, this is something that supposedly happened in JonBenet's bathroom. So the scream definitely would have alerted other people in the house if it was in that sort of central part of the house. Does that make sense? And also, as far as I know, Patsy wasn't a Girl Scout who could tie knots. Anyway, I'm not going to take it further than that. If you've listened this far, thank you for concentrating. Thanks for staying with it. And I'll see you guys next time.